Good morning everyone from Mexico. I'm so sorry it's been a little bit of time since I last filmed and did a vlog for you guys. Basically, I got to Mexico and I was really jet lagged for a couple of days, and unfortunately I wasn't just jet lagged, it turned into a full-on illness. I think what happened was probably when I was on the plane my immune system was a bit low from being so tired, and then I caught a sore throat cold, head cold thing. And it's really only been like yesterday I started to feel a bit better. Today I feel a lot better. But 2 days ago I really was struggling. I was like, oh my god, I just want to be back in Phuket, I just want to be well. But now, yeah, I'm feeling a lot better, totally different, and I am ready and raring to go. So this morning we are on to a weight session, and then I'm going to do a CrossFit class, and then I'm going to do a handstand session later. So all the kind of like usual things. I will try and film some of it for you guys so you can kind of see what I'm doing. And yeah, life is good. It's been a bit rainy actually. Well, I think it's been a bit rainy overnight. The weather yesterday was beautiful. In the day it's generally really nice. In the mornings it's been a little bit on the cold side, which I wasn't expecting to, because I can't remember it being cold last time I was here. But it's quite like fresh. But I think that's been a bit unusual because I don't think it's normally like that. Anyway, we have got a little bit better with the sleep. So instead of waking up at like 2, I'm now getting up at maybe like 3:34. I'm trying to build it up to about 4:30. I feel like that's more of an acceptable time. This morning I did my coffee run about 3:30, so problem is sometimes if I do it at 4, which I don't normally, one day when I did it at 4, I had to go to like 4 different 7-Elevens because like 3 of them were closed, and it's very unpredictable because they say they're open 24/7. You get to them, they're not open. You're like, okay, next one. I mean, there's literally like hundreds here. They're kind of every 100 meters you get another 7-Eleven. So life is quite good. But I'm gonna get a bit of a move on, and I'm gonna do a pool session this morning, and then I don't know what the CrossFit class will be. We will soon find out, and then maybe I'll film some of my handstand session. But I will check my guys later. Today I thought I would talk you through my hamstring session. So it was obviously a leg session, but it was predominantly hamstrings. I started off with Romanian deadlifts. These are straight leg deadlifts. So you normally just want like a slight micro bend in the knee, but you want to try and keep the legs really as straight as possible, and for the connection in the hamstrings. You can actually see quite good hamstring striations, which I'm rather pleased with because, as you guys know, I've been working a lot the last year on hamstrings. So you can see a little bit of a shake. I think this was my main top working set, and I did about 3 sets at this weight, and I was aiming for about 10 repetitions in each set. So this, I think it was about 80 kg, so not too heavy, not too light. But yeah, my legs were really shaking as I was going down, and this was the last working set. After the Romanian deadlifts, I moved on to good mornings. You guys will know good mornings are one of my favourite exercises. They are obviously the same as a Romanian deadlift in terms of they're both a hip hinge, but I just thought, why not finish the kind of hip hinge strong and go straight into Romanian deadlifts afterwards. I actually find the remaining deadlifts works the lower back a little bit more as well. Don't know if it's just the angle, it makes it a little bit more difficult on the lower back. But again, I feel really good connection in the hamstrings, and because I was in a CrossFit gym doing this workout, you have to be a little bit more creative in terms of making sure that you're getting that muscle connection if you don't have the isolated machines. After the good mornings, I did do a couple of sets of those. I moved on to front leg elevated split squats. Now, ideally, I probably would have done a back for elevated split squat because it would have worked maybe the hamstrings and the glutes a little bit more, whereas a front for elevated split squat does work the quads a little bit more, but because the rest of the exercises in the session were predominantly hamstring based, I thought it won't harm doing one exercise which focuses a little bit more on the quads. So I did a couple of sets of these. I think probably it was about 3 sets in total, and the weight was at, I think it was about 50 kg. So you can see quite nice quad development in the leg as I'm going down. After the front leg elevated split squats, I moved on to box step-ups. With the box step-ups, you want to really focus on a slow eccentric movement, so when you're lowering down towards the floor, trying not to bounce off the foot, which is touching the floor, and then really driving up with that hamstring and leg on the box. So I did 3 sets of 10 on each side. Again, this doesn't just work the hamstrings, it also works the glutes really well. So when you stand up, you want to really make sure you're contracting the hamstrings and contracting the glutes. So with each exercise I don't focus on a heavy load. Like, I potentially could have added some weights to this, but I could feel it really well in the hamstrings and glutes. So to be honest, I didn't really need to. After the box step-ups, I moved on to a single leg elevated glute bridge. So I could have done these just on the floor, but I found actually just elevating that leg makes it a little bit more challenging. So I'm really focusing again on that hamstring and that glute squeeze. What I also could have done is I could have done hip thrusts. I didn't do them today. I think I was quite fatigued at this point. My hamstrings were already on fire, and so this was kind of like my last finishing exercise, and I just finished off with 2 sets of this. But as you can see, nice and controlled, focusing on squeezing the glutes and the hamstrings at the top. If you're doing single leg, obviously it intensifies the exercise, it makes it more challenging than if you're doing double leg. I would suggest, if double leg's quite easy for you, obviously then just do elevate one leg in the air. Good morning, guys. So I thought we would do a little bit of a summary of this past week in Mexico. Because honestly, it's been quite a challenge, quite a struggle. You guys know I'm a very positive, optimistic, happy person. That's just the way I am. I'm always pretty much like that. But this week has definitely been quite testing. So an amazing, 2 months in Phuket, and to leave that was quite difficult. Because what I'd identified kind of before going to Phuket was that obviously I travel a lot, and I'm so grateful to be able to live such an incredible life and to be able to travel, because it's really eye-opening. I meet amazing people, I see incredible things, I can experience the warmth, the amazing food, the culture. People are just so, lovely. It's hard to kind of describe in words, but I had found that I had kind of lacked a community. And I think obviously prior to COVID, I had kind of worked in a gym, and my community was the gym. It was my kind of co-workers, other PTs, it was my clients, it was my friends outside the gym. And so I'd kind of gone from an environment where I was in that all the time to COVID, where actually I was so busy, so goal driven, because I was kind of prepping the whole time, to then go travelling. And at the beginning it was very, very exciting, so I didn't really think too much about the fact I hadn't really got a community around me. But then I really found, towards the end of last year, maybe in the beginning of last year, that actually, as much as travelling is wonderful, I just miss having a community of people around me. So Phuket was the first time I really felt like that sense of belonging again. And to me, yeah, as I said, I'd been kind of like looking for that, searching for that. And to have that just meant that I no longer felt kind of alone. Like often I think when you're traveling a lot, you know, there's so many incredible pros, but there's also some downsides of it, especially when you kind of like work on your own. And I think one of those things is that traveling is very transient. You meet people, you get to know them, they leave or you leave, and then you kind of move on to the next set of people. Whereas in Phuket there was more of a kind of like central community of people who had kind of, they were either living there or it was just easy to integrate into it. So it was quite hard to kind of like, as I said, come away from that and not restart fresh, because I know people in Mexico, but just not obviously when you've kind of not been somewhere for nearly a year. Everyone changes, it's very different. So yeah, it's kind of hopefully gonna be getting better and I'll get to know people again and I'll get into it. I'm going to give it a little bit of time, see how I feel, but I do, as I said, really miss Phuket. And what I kind of want to get to the place of is where I have maybe 2 bases. So the UK, for example, might be one and I stay there X amount of time a year. And then maybe Phuket will be the other. And maybe eventually I'll just stay in one, I don't know. But yeah. It is really important for me at this time, I guess, in my life to feel that kind of sense of belonging. And yeah, let's just see if we find it here. But anyway, that was a bit of a ramble. But I think that's why, you know, as well as being not that wet at the beginning while I was here, I was also feeling a little bit like, oh, I wish I hadn't left. But it's always good to kind of put things into perspective and come away from an environment that maybe seems really, really ideal and see if actually that is just as ideal if you're then in another environment and kind of compare it. So yeah, that is kind of my thoughts and feelings for now. Anyone who's kind of travelled might know or have experienced what I've been going through in terms of just feeling quite alone sometimes if I'm travelling for long periods of time and getting to lots of different places. But as I said, you know, I am very, very comfortable with my own time and I like spending a lot of time on my own, but it's also really nice to have other people who are similar minded because it's just a nice experience to experience things with others, not just obviously on your own all the time. So the other thing I did want to say is obviously I had started doing more CrossFit and I was getting quite into it, and as you know, I think I mentioned in my last vlog, I really love it. But the problem comes when obviously my main priority at this point in time is still bodybuilding, and I have, you know, some pretty big goals for bodybuilding, hopefully this year, maybe next year. And one thing I do have to realise is, you know, it's so important to focus on the one thing. And something I often do is I get a bit carried away in the moment thinking, oh, you know, I'm really, really enjoying this. This is like what I need to be doing. This is the path I want to go down, when I actually need to really stick to the thing that, you know, is leading me towards my goals, which is making sure that I'm doing all my training towards my bodybuilding goals. So obviously all my bodybuilding sessions, all my handstand sessions, things like that, and not leading too far astray from that, because if I do, then I was talking to one of my coaches about this. It's very apparent that the bodybuilding physique, the CrossFit physique for girls isn't really the physique that is suitable or ideal for my bodybuilding journey at this point in time. So what you'll often see on maybe a CrossFit female athlete is they have very big quads, and I'm already obviously quite quad dominant, but they don't really have any glutes or hamstrings. So you need glutes and hamstrings in the bodybuilding categories that I compete in, and also in CrossFit they quite often have quite like thick cores, because obviously you do a lot of kind of ab work, and that's not ideal for bodybuilding. You want, you know, a taper in at the waist. Obviously you want some ab development, but when you're doing a lot of kind of lifting, heavy lifting, your core gets quite thick. So that again isn't ideal. So I do need to make sure that I'm sticking very much, obviously, to my bodybuilding programming. I think it's fine. It was fine when I was doing kind of some of the more cardio-based classes, but when I'm doing too much kind of CrossFit, even though I love it, I do have to think maybe it will start, you know, I think it's fine for a month or so, but if you're doing it for a long period of time, especially to the intensity that I like to do things at, which is quite high, you will see those changes in your body, and so it's something that I need to be aware of. So at some point I probably will compete in CrossFit, maybe next year, but I can't say that now because I do want to prioritise obviously my bodybuilding goals at least this year, and just see kind of where we get as high as I can within that industry. So that's the kind of other thing I need to just be aware of, because I was thinking that I was going to be doing predominantly a kind of a CrossFit program, and then I was going to work, or still going to be doing bodybuilding program, but work in a CrossFit program as well alongside it. But I just realistically don't think that's possible. It's certainly not optimal. And just to make sure that I prioritise bodybuilding first, because that is my main goal at this point in time. And as I said, in the future that might change, but not at this point in time.